to open a new tab. And this will basically be VS Code if you're using that in your class at school. Um, it's just VS Code in your browser. So I'm already set up with the dark main or the default dark theme. Um, Zoom, get out of my way. Jeez. There it is. The little gear down here is how you can go to themes, color theme, and then you can choose a theme if you want. Um, like I said, I've already started mine, so the color is applied. Let me here. Okay, I see your space running. Jari, um, I don't see you. I don't see you having logged in yet. Do you need your credentials?
What'd you say?
I don't see you logged into Coder yet. Do you need your credentials for that?
Um, yes. I don't know. How did I get to the website? Or I didn't, if there was a link in the email, I don't think I didn't see it.
It's all right. I can send it to you in chat. So, and just as a reminder, the sign up on the class.hscc Atlanta site. So I'm going to send that too. Let's just go ahead and put that in the group chat. If you click on the information, nope, it's the coding with AI class. This is the URL to our coding environment. It's always just code.hscc-atlanta.com. And then you log in with your email. And I'm going to go ahead and send you the email that I have for you and the password. And Cody, I don't see you logged in yet either. Do you need your credentials?
I think Cody maybe rejoined. Cody, can you still hear us?
Yeah, I had to rejoin because it kicked me out of the meeting.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Um,
So let me send it to the other one. There we go.
Am I supposed to, what do I do after I've logged in?
So same thing because you don't yet have a workspace set up. You won't have this part, but you can come over here to new workspace, select student web server, give it a name or click this to take the auto-suggested name and select introduction to AI and then click create workspace. And once then all the scrolling has stopped happening and your screen looks like this with the green border and this button, you want to right click and open link in new tab or just hold control and click it. And once you've done that, you will have this with the welcome screen. And I've created a YouTube channel for session recordings. Of course, I skipped the step where you add a easy URL, but I will go ahead and add that to the information here. It will be under the program information, probably up at the top there. See if I can't claim the HSCC Atlanta YouTube handle though. Okay, I see everybody but Cody and the coder. All right. So since we've got some new people, uh, staff has already introduced themselves and told us a little about what they're studying already. Um, let's go um, go from the bottom list here. What do we have? Oh, I have other people.
I
Anthony, I know
think,
you've already. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jamie, sorry.
Oh, I just names I didn't recognize at the bottom of the list here. So Anthony, I've got you here. Uh, Go ahead and give us a quick introduction and tell us what kinds of coding you've already had experience in, if any.
Um, yeah, as you all know, my name is Anthony Bailey Jr. I go to Normal West High School in Normal, Illinois, and I have a lot of experience with Python and coding in there, but not much with anything else.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Cody, up next.
My name is Cody Sepulveda. I go to Jordan Hills Middle School, and I haven't had much experience with coding. I just like Scratch in school stuff.
Okay. Next, Jari, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
My name is Jari Abdusabor, and I go to like a hybrid homeschool, and I've been learning some coding languages like Python, HTML, and stuff.
Sorry, Jamie, you're on mute.
I was muting while I was typing. So we're off mute now. All right. So for the previous two sessions, we had gone through how to connect to the coding system and log in and start up a workspace. Um, Again, go to class.hscc-atlanta and sign up, and you will find most of the information that you're going to need in it's organized as books. So the program information or class information for students, and then this year's uh, basic course information is under coding with AI. So there you'll see the coder login link here. So easy to remember. I will go ahead and add links to the YouTube channel to review sessions you may have missed. And then here is general information. If you need to reach out to the instructors, there is a form under contact here. So you can reach us there. Also very important because this year's coding class is a little bit shortened in comparison to how much time we've had previously, mostly due to the fact that the competition itself has been moved up by a month. So the actual competition part of it is happening sooner than previous years. Uh, and so for that, we are trying a different approach rather than uh, starting at bare basics and working through that all the way to being able to build our application for competition. We're going to start using AI from the very beginning here. So it's really important, this under class information, the GitHub education link. Um, this is a way to get free AI for use for class. Um, so the first thing you would need to do is sign up on GitHub with to get yourself an account. You can see I've already got mine set up. So um, once you have that, then you can come back here and click this and start an application. Now you'll register as a student and need to enter your school and possibly uh, upload a picture of your school ID or some other proof. They have several different ways to show that you are a student, which I can't do because I'm definitely not a student anymore, y'all. So we need that so that once we really get into the coding thing, we're going to use the AI to write code for us and then be able to inspect the code and see how it did what it did and how that works. Generally, a faster path to learning how to get things done than starting all the way at bare skills. Um, just because I know some of you have attended previous sessions, anybody already have their GitHub Copilot education established? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Um, we'll come back to the course. We've already done the introduction to our online learning tools, and I don't want to waste the time of people that were here for that session. So, again, everything we covered is in this page, in this chapter of the Coding with AI book. So, it would be really good to both read this and review the Shanika's face on the cover image, review the previous sessions that she missed. Um, I think last week's session, which I just uploaded, oh no, there's March 21. I don't know why the other one isn't showing, but the first session is in there too. I think maybe it's just marked as private. Yep, it is. There we go. So, and again, I will add this link to the information page. Um, for now, we should all have our environments up and running. In that introduction, let me make sure this is the right button. Yep. It also covers some standard command line commands for Linux, which is what our learning environments are actually built in. So close that now. If I come over here on the bottom, I can open up a terminal and issue commands to Linux. As a web developer, understanding how the command line works and how the terminal, which is what this program is called, works, you'll also be using that once you start building the competition app to uh, do various things throughout it. Um, and then in our last session, we covered some basic computing or computer coding ideas. The ideas of basic data types, things like integers and strings, as well as more complex types, and then how we encode establish what are called variables. Variables store information of various different data types for your program. Again, this was the last session, and if you missed it, you got to catch up. Some of it maybe will become apparent as we work through some additional coding concepts here today. I'm trying to think of anything that's straight missing. I don't see it. Also, because we're going to be doing some more of this today, within your coding environment, we are basically using two different languages to do some simple coding, or some simple examples of coding here. They are JavaScript and PHP. So super fast over here in your file explorer of VS Code. And is there anybody who hasn't used VS Code before? Uh,
I
okay. So VS Code is where you write all of your code for this class. Uh, it's called an integrated development environment, and breakdown of it is, and also it's called code server in this case. When it's in the browser, it's code server. When it's on your desktop, it's called VS Code. That's the only difference. Breakdown of how it's organized over here. But for today, we have our main folder, just like your Mac or your Windows machine, kind of an Explorer window. And you might not have these four folders when you started up. These were added last week. But to add a new folder, you just click this, or you can right click down here and do new folder. And go ahead and create folders for JS, or called JavaScript, and PHP. Those are the two languages you were using. And then with each one, when I do something like create a new file, it's just a right click there or this button and create a new file. You can give it a name. So once we've done that, we can run, or we can write code in these files, and then we can run them. So again, there's two languages in play here. First one is JavaScript, and to run that, we use a program called Node. And we would just type Node, again, to run that program, and tell it what file we want to run. And this is where the information on that Linux operating system and commands will help, because we need to tell it to run math.js from the JS folder. So to do that, we would start by saying dot means current directory, and then it's forward slashes in Linux, just like Mac, but Windows uses backslashes. So you got to be careful which one you use. It's forward slashes here. We're going to say the JS folder and math.js. It's going to spit out some numbers. We can see the results here, but the results are what we coded up here. And then also, just to run a PHP program, you would type PHP, the program that runs PHP scripts, tell it the PHP directory, and see if types, oops. So that's just run this file. So, and again, for our competition project, we will be working mostly in PHP, but almost any web application requires some JavaScript for the front side, the front end. The front end of an application is what's actually visible in the browser. So for our class site, this browser page is part of the front end. The part of the program that stores all the information and stores them as books and chapters and all of that is called the back end. The back end in our class site is actually PHP. So you don't really see PHP in the application. It's all hidden and doing things behind the scenes. Um, just to kind of, sorry, organizing here, catch up from the last session where we started writing some very simple code in PHP and JavaScript. So let's go ahead and just review this types because we're talking about the data types, numbers, both integers and decimals, strings. Go ahead and bring this back up. Our data types, integers, decimals, strings, booleans are just true and false. And then we have the idea of arrays and objects. So we didn't really do that here. But here we're saying, actually, I think this one got multi-use last time. So even though it's called types, it's actually illustrating the order of execution. So both PHP and JavaScript execute the code from the top of the page to the bottom. So this file is actually demonstrating that it's going to print first instruction, second instruction. We see that actually in action here. It's gonna calculate some math here, and if the result of this equation is greater than 10, it says result is greater than 10 or otherwise. This is an if-else block. It says the result is 10 or less. And so we can see the order of operation that things happen because it prints them out in that order. So I'm thinking everybody but maybe Cody is already familiar with the if logic control structure. And we'll just go over what this is doing here. The first thing, actually, we got to take a step back for a second. First thing that's happening is we create a variable named result. In PHP, variables always start with the $sign. So we created a variable called result, and we told it in code that result should be the result or should be 5 plus 3. You can assign variables values various different ways. You'll often see foo and bar as example variables. So foo, yeah, we'll go ahead and make it a string that is result is, and bar is false. Now, what you see when I'm doing this, I type var and it automatically suggests equals null, is because I have the GitHub Copilot installed. And that's one of the features of it is it's going to auto suggest things. You can see it trying to do that down here again. Whenever it has this little blue thing on the side, uh, the green highlight is what it's offering to add. And if I want to accept that, I just go ahead and click that, and now it's written it to the code page. So it saw that I wrote a variable named foo that is a string that says the result is colon. So naturally, it assumed that we wanted to add the result to the end of that for our output. I'm going to clear my screen and run that again. Now we can see it says still first instruction, second instruction. So I got to here. Then these are all variables, so they don't actually have any output. We check if the result is greater than 10, which it is not. So then it prints, which is a way of getting output. The print command just simply prints it out here. The result is 10 or less. But then we added this at the bottom with the help of the AI that says the result is, and then this dot in PHP we covered last time, but we're just going to redefine it. The dot is called a concatenation operator. It joins two things together. And in PHP, we get to do easy things like joining a string and a number, and it's not going to complain because a result here after the math is still an integer type, and foo is a string. And we have a fancy function in PHP to be able to illustrate that. Actually, I may as well leave bar in there. Again, that was the AI helping me out. If I run this again, what we see, these 3 lines added to the output. And so that's the result of using the var underscore dump function and passing it 3 values. The first value is foo up here, which it says is a 15 character long string containing the result is colon space. Bar was a Boolean that we set to false. And var is we set to a special kind of data type called null. Null has no value and it has no options. It is always just null. And so that's why it doesn't have to tell us that it is a null type, because it just is null. So that's one way when you're working on code, if you want to see if you set up a bunch of variables and you need to see what those values are, for instance, after adding 5 plus 3, you can do a var dump. Nope, that's all. Let's run it down here. Run it again, and we see that the result after the math is an integer value of 8. So that's a really useful tool when you're working on a project or working on any code to be able to output what the values of different variables are, and it's a process called debugging. So if we take the debugging out, again, our script works in the order from top to bottom, and when it gets to the bottom, it prints the result, of this expression, which the expression, in almost every case, expressions are a test of truthiness. And so what we're asking is the value of result, which after adding 5 plus 3 is 8, is that greater than 10? And we're asking very specifically greater than 10 and not, and we covered this last time, greater than or equal to 10. And there goes the AI trying to help me out again. Or we could actually say, oops, less than or equal to 10. So if I update that and rerun the script, we can see that it changed the output. The result is 10 or less. If we change this and go ahead and add another 5 to it, so we took our 5 plus 3 plus and made it 5 plus 3 plus 5, the output of the script will change again. So now it says it's greater than 10, the result is 13. So, just gonna pause for a minute to see if anybody's got questions about this so far. So let's just go ahead and actually, here, I'm going to create a new file. And even though the name types was not very accurate for what it is, we're going to keep that. I'm going to create a types.js. So again, once you have your GitHub Copilot account set up, this is the kind of way that you might use the AI in your coding work. So I'm going to go to my AI chat bar, which is on the far right. I've opened type.js and it's blank. And automatically, whenever you go to use your AI chat down here, it's going to include the file tab that's already open. And again, this is part of the environment session, but as you work on different files, they open as tabs across the top here. So we have type.js, and I'm going to click this to also include types.php, and I'm going to ask it to convert types.php to JavaScript and I think I misnamed it here, didn't I? That's right, in types.js. That's all I have to ask it to do. There it goes, a little sluggish. And we'll see that it tells us it's working. It's going to read the current types.js and our PHP file. And sometimes this will all scroll by really quickly. You can go back and inspect it. And now you see that it's actually writing the results directly into the types.js file. When that happens, a couple markers. First, over here, you see the square with the circle in the middle. That's indicating that AI has altered that. It appears up here as well. And down here, you can see that it altered one file. Sometimes it'll alter multiple files. Um, Now, when it's all highlighted in green, it's not officially saved to the file yet. And this is a good stage to go through and read what it's done. So we asked it to write this PHP code in JavaScript. So the equivalent of JavaScript's print, or the equivalent in JavaScript of the PHP print function is console.log. Oops, didn't mean to move that. Console is this in the IDE, but on like a web page, if you know how to use inspect for the web developer tools, there they go. Which can also be F12. Yes, Anthony.
When I try to load up the AI sidebar, it keeps saying there's an error, and it says the extension GitHub Copilot Chat cannot be installed because it was not found. But I have the GitHub like application. Like,
You have GitHub Copilot?
yeah, it's just saying like it's like not connecting.
Oh, okay. Um, I'm trying to remember how to disconnect mine. Let me quick go through this result, and then I'll bounce back to you here. Um, so saying that the F12 or inspect will open the dev tools window in your browser. And this works for most browsers, Safari included. This area down here, you can see in the tab, is called the console. So in a web application, console.log will print out here. When we use Node to run our JS, it'll print down here in the terminal. So these are the same. Instead of print, it's console.log, and it says first instruction, second instruction. Same thing that we had here. One minor difference is in PHP, we added this. This is a special character combination, means add a new line. Console.log automatically adds those new lines. We have the same variables. We declare them a little bit different. In JavaScript, we have, instead of using a dollar sign to indicate it's a variable, we have to use a declaration. And most of the time you will use let, sometimes var, sometimes const, short for constant. But in this case, it chose let, and it set up the same variables that we have in our PHP. Then it does the if block again, and it's using the result is less than or equal to 10. And we can see that with the exception of the dollar sign use to indicate a variable in PHP, it's exactly the same. And if we think of this as the same as print, well, that entire block is the same as well. We get down to the bottom where we've used our concatenation operator in PHP. That's the dot. The concatenation operator in JavaScript is actually the plus sign, just like math. But don't get it confused because uh, it does mean sometimes addition and sometimes it means concatenation. Um, so we've reviewed what it wants to add, and we can click keep to write the code. And now let's run it using, Node, and we're going to say it's in, sorry, the JS folder and types. And then you can also, when you're in a terminal here, you can open a new terminal, clicking this plus sign. So now I can run the PHP here, PHP, and by clicking between them, we can see the difference. Remember how I said in PHP, we had to add this new line character to the end in order to get the new lines afterwards, and there isn't one here. So that's why it prints this. The result is 13, and then just puts your prompt back. Here in, oops, sorry, click down here. In JavaScript, because console.log always adds that new line, we get it on a new line there. But you can see the results between the two languages are the same. So now we can jump back to Anthony's problem with GitHub Copilot. And I am trying to remember. So not only is GitHub Copilot available in in the plugin here for VS Code. Um, and I need one more piece of information to really use the AI to do this. In each of your workspaces, and this is because your workspaces are basically running like a little mini Linux server. I'm going to clear this. Um, Linux servers or Linux in general put temporary files at /tmp. So if I do ls.al, and those are again in our Linux basic commands, asking it to list everything in the temp directory. We get this, and we can see that copilot chat.v6 is already saved to temp. That was part of the setup. Because it's giving you an error message, what I'm going to ask Copilot to do here is give me instructions to install it. Located at temp that. All right. So we're just doing a prompt outside of our IDEs. And we're saying I need to install Copilot Chat, which is the plugin in Code Server. That's our VS Code in the browser. And I'm telling it that the v6 file is located at this location. So, yep. Okay. So it's given us this command, code-server install extension temp copilot chat.visx. Or I always say about v6. Um, so what you want to do, and I'm going to put this in chat. And again, you can do this now, but if you don't have a Copilot account yet, it won't be effective. But copy that into your command, and I don't think I'll break anything if I run it on mine. The other thing is because these workspaces are kind of dynamic, if you break it, we can always just rebuild it. So I'm going to run it in mine too, see what it has to say. It's not saying anything. What's going on? Oh, one other thing I bet is missing. No, it's there. Which once you all get Copilot accounts, this will be necessary. I thought it was pre-installed. Anthony, any chance we can get you to share your screen and we can work through this? It'll be helpful for everybody in the long run.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I need to turn on screen recording access in my settings.
Ah, makes sense.
Yeah, if you have to rejoin Zoom, that's fine too.
And then for Shanika, as the only other instructor here, this is one thing that we can't do through the instructor workspaces because we don't have terminal access to their uh, containers.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I'm trying to load up mine too to see if I need to install the Copilot plugin.
Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and reshare my screen real quick because as we were speaking about it, I loaded up my instructor workspace and I got this message. So if you're not rejoining yet, Anthony, is this the message that you're getting? Chat failed to load because the installed version of Copilot Chat extension is not compatible with this version of Code Server. Well, Anthony rejoined us. So I was wondering if that was the error he was seeing. Um, this is going to be a pain because the Copilot Chat plugin is not officially available. Let me see if this will actually work. It's not. Um, so it's not officially supported, and I had to manually install it in Workspace, as it looks like it is already out of date. Oh, there's Anthony again. So Anthony, if this is the error you're seeing, then it's we'll have to come up with a fix for it before next session. I don't know if he's trying to rejoin here or not.
Yeah, that was what I was saying.
Oh, okay. So you did see this. This is the message.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get that fixed in workspaces before our next session. And then I'm going to have to find a way to make sure that I get an update every time it changes. I will definitely work that out before our next session. So again, as you all start getting your Copilot account set up, you'll have access to this. But for now, I'll just go back to discussing how we're going to be implement or using the Copilot or AIs in our coding. And this is an example. We probably won't do too much of this because we'll be building from uh, kind of the ground up, but there might be places where we would need to convert PHP to JavaScript and vice versa. This is a real good way of showing how to do it. The last example that I worked through with the AI in our previous session, and make some quick changes. So one other thing in your workspace, let's go back to this one. When you see this in your workspace, we use this to open our code server window. Same thing here. You can right click and open a new tab or control click to open this. This will show for each project. So again, when you started your workspace, you started it as an intro to AI project with that selection drop down. So that automatically set up this output. And this output is driven, get this out of the way, by our index.html file, which was already in your workspace. So we can see as it was built for your workspace, it just says, welcome, this is an introduction to coding with AI lesson. This is pure HTML. The document setup is a standard HTML document. So HTML documents first start with this doc type declaration. Don't even need to know what it does, just add it to the start. Then HTML is a series of nested tags, and tags are written as the less than sign, the tag name, and then the greater than sign. So like this. To the extent that a lot of people don't even call these less than or greater than, they're just tag. What am I trying to say? Tag brackets is one way to say it, but and most tags have more, or not most, but tags can be just the tag name. For instance, here we use the HTML tag to define our full HTML document, so you kind of always start and close with that. There's a head section which gives the browser some information about what your HTML page is going to be. That really doesn't have much else, it's just head. You can see here we have a meta tag, and that gets what's called an attribute. The attribute is char set, which means character set, and that's saying that this web page will use the UTF-8 character set. We don't need to worry about what that is right now, but it's pretty standard. This meta tag, and meta means meta information, information about this site. Some of it is just informational. Some of it helps the browser decide how to render your output, and that's what this is doing. It's talking about how to render it. The title tag is how we get the title up here in our tab, Introduction to AI. That's what that came from. And then we're linking in another file called a style sheet. Now, this is that CSS. CSS describes how things should look, where they should be placed, and how they should look. And in order to use CSS, you either have to include it inline or, like we've done here, link it in. Again, there are attributes to the link tag. It's relative, what is it? Relevance or relative? No, it's relevance. REL. Nope, relationship. Sometimes it's relationship. So we're saying it's a style sheet. And href is the HTML way of telling the browser where another file is. And so the href here is style.css, and without any other markings or indication here, it's telling the browser to look in the same place as index.html for that style.css file. We have some very basic rules. H1 here is what makes this blue and big, and this simply tells that all other text in the body, which is the next tag we'll look at, should be this size and font style. We can get into CSS deeper later, but for now we want to stay looking at our HTML. That closes out our head section. So then the next important section is the body. And the body is where all of the stuff that gets rendered in the browser will go. Now, in this case, yours will start with just this. That's our H1. H1 is a heading. Headings go from H1 to H6 and generally get smaller and smaller. They're meant to show like an outline. So you start with H1 as your main title point. H2 is kind of a subheading. H3 is a sub-subheading, etc. And they generally get rendered in bigger colors and fonts or whatever, but not always. P is for paragraph, and that's simply saying that this text should be shown as a paragraph. So now when we go back and did I close it? I did. Oh no, up here. We can see that our heading, which we indicated was big and blue, is rendered as that, and our paragraph is just text. So basic HTML document. And what we did last week, and I'm trying to decide if why is nothing working? Oh, because it didn't preserve my history. No, I'm not going to rerun the AI. There we go. So what we did last week at the end of our session is we asked the AI to use the Medio or Open Medio API, which is a weather forecast API. It's free and open and has a lot of features, but we want to do something really simple. So we asked the AI to use openmedio.com's API to load the current temperature for Atlanta, Georgia, and display it in our uh, index.html page. So it ran, and just like before, it added this in green highlight, and it updated our app.js because you can see it's got a lot more in it than it used to, or than maybe yours does. Close some of these other files, get out of my way. Okay, so again, when it was done, we hit keep to accept its changes, and we can see here that it added another paragraph. But this paragraph has an ID attribute. This is something that especially when working with JavaScript, you'll add IDs to various different elements, and that's what every tag on a HTML document is eventually called, is an element, to identify it, to make it easy for the JavaScript to find it in the web page. So what it did is it created this paragraph with an ID called temperature. Then it added kind of what would be called loading text. So this is what is displayed when the page first opens. And in fact, if I delete it, the Java, or if I delete the JavaScript page that links in app.js, I can see that when I load this, it's just going to load and show that. So that's kind of like a what we might call a placeholder. So that then, oops, there we go. We add back in this script tag. Now, script tags, similar to how the link up here loaded the style.css, it uses a different attribute. In this case, instead of href, it's called source or src, and it's pointing at this app.js file in our same directory. What that says to the browser is load app.js and execute the code you find there. And the code you find there is just, again, JavaScript code. So this is what the AI put together for us. We didn't give it any other instructions than to use the Open Meteor API and show the current temperature for Atlanta, Georgia. So by looking at this, and again, in the process, we saw how it worked through this, but in looking at this now, we can also see a couple things. First, if you go and read through the Open Meteor API documents, which there will be API documents that we'll need to understand for the uh, competition. But since I already know this one, I will say that the Open Meteor API we're going to use that we end up using is the Forecast API, and the Forecast API also includes the current temperature. But to get the current temperature for a location, instead of being able to send something like Atlanta, Georgia to it, we have to know what the latitude and longitude are. And so the AI very conveniently automatically went out and looked up what the longitude and latitude for Atlanta, Georgia generally is. And because it was able to do that, it created two variables. Like I said earlier, when we set up this, it used let to declare the variables. We covered this in the previous session, but with JavaScript variables, let establishes a variable that is what we might call normal. You can change it. So we could take foo, oops, because we declared it as a let, and now we can say foo. That's a good one. Good suggestion. We're going to, and here the plus is a concatenation operator. By adding the equal sign after it, we're saying take the value of foo, which is this, and concatenate result to the end of it. It is the same as this. But because we declared foo with let, and var would be another option, but we almost will always use let, it's changeable. What happens over here is there's another way to declare JavaScript variables called constant. By clicking it, it's highlighting all the uses of constant here. You can see that it almost exclusively used constants. Constants are JavaScript variables that are not going to change. They can't be updated. They can't be concatenated like we did with foo there. So they're just setting a variable that's always going to be the same value as when you establish it. So here it says temperature element variable, and it's using this code. This document get element by ID is how we can go back to this and get this element. So by using get element by ID and we pass temperature to it, we're capturing this element in JavaScript. Then it creates a function. Functions are a way of bundling lines of code together so that they run in order as one group, so that you can more efficiently structure your code most of the time. This didn't necessarily have to have a function. It could have just been laid out like that. But best practice is to wrap stuff up into functions. So that's what it did, is the best practice. Establishes constants for the latitude and longitude. Those won't change. The URL, also called an endpoint for the API, it looked up the API, understood what the URL required, and created an endpoint variable for that. Again, it's just a URL. Like you could even plug this into your browser. I can demonstrate. If I copy it and paste it, now I have to come back and I have to grab, that's the latitude, right? Yep, latitude. And I have to put it where I'd substitute that. So now I'm just and pretty it up. So, and this is actually one way to test it is by replacing the variables in the URL and pasting it into the browser, because this particular one doesn't need anything special. You can just paste it in the URL like that, and it'll show you what it's going to retrieve. It's going to retrieve this JavaScript, or it's called JSON text. And the JSON text is a way of describing data, and the data that it's fetching from the top level includes latitude and longitude again. the time this information was generated in microseconds. The offset from universal time is a code, which is generally Greenwich Mean Time. It's just a way of using a timestamp that everybody understands rather than having to say, is it daylight savings time or not? So we can expect that our data is going to come back in this time zone. So if we want to show it locally, we would have to adjust for that. Some elevation information. This is the important stuff. The current and the current units. So currently, with this timestamp, and it's going to update every 900 seconds, the temperature is 58.3. 58.3 what? Well, that's why we have current units. And again, here we can see the interval is 900 and seconds, and the temperature is 58.3 degrees Fahrenheit. So having this as kind of a preview informs how we read the code that it generated. One thing here that I didn't explain, in JavaScript, there's what's called template variable replacement. And it's a fancy way of saying that rather than trying to concatenate this all together, it's using this backtick operator. This backtick is to the left of the number one key, and it has a special format. I could rewrite this caps lock. So we're going to take the first part. Then we have to use the JavaScript concatenation. And there now it knows what I want to do, and it's going to complete that for me. So we could have written it like this. Oops, forgot my H. Which is saying take this URL, break it into sections so that we can insert our latitude and longitude variables where they're being asked for. You can see the pattern here. So the URL latitude equals and longitude equals. But the easier way in JavaScript is to use this template replacement character, and then you can write it all as one, and you just have to wrap those variable names in this $ squiggly bracket. But it does the same thing. So it creates that's the endpoint that it's going to hit, and we already know what the results look like. Close this. So those are three constants that it sets up. Now, this is something that we haven't talked about and might be new to you. Even if you've studied other programming languages, it is the same in both JavaScript and PHP, which is one of the reasons why we kind of pair those two up a lot. It's called a try-catch block. What it is doing is preparing for errors. By wrapping your code, this code, in the try part of the try-catch block, if anything goes wrong here, and for instance, an error is thrown, you can see two places where an error might be caught and thrown. That's just kind of the convention that they use, catching an error and then rethrowing it. Here it's manually throwing errors that would be caught, and then it handles those in a special way. So this is how we can display a nicely formatted error message if something goes wrong. So it sets up our try-catch block. Now, one more variable that it needs is the response. And again, this is where the AI knows things that we don't know yet, and it's going to do it for us, but we can learn from what it's written for us. So quite simply, there's a fetch function. And again, this was all in the previous sessions, but as functions are written, again, we have our function here. Asynchronous just means that I don't even know how to explain that. It, it, it doesn't matter in this case whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, but in general, synchronous means to wait until the function has completed before running any other code. Asynchronous means that it can run independent of other code that might be running, but it's the only code we have here, so it's just going to run, asynchronous or not. But we create the function by declaring a function and the function name and then parentheses, but in the parentheses, you can put your arguments, variables that would be passed to it. Well, fetch is a JavaScript variable available in modern browsers, so we didn't have to write that function. It was just there. And in this case, since we don't have any other information to send other than just our endpoint URL, we pass that. And what fetch is going to do is fetch is actually going to use JavaScript to go out and actually open this URL like it would in a web browser and gather this information. The await keyword here just simply means that, and like asynchronous and synchronous, don't do anything else until this finishes. So until fetch has finished and returned its information, don't move past this line. So when all of that is done, fetch sends this information and puts it into this variable response. There's some other information that gets wrapped up in response, like OK. OK actually is the kind of the browser saying this happened and we successfully reached out and got this information, or maybe the URL was wrong, so it would be a 404 not found. OK would be false then, and we're checking for, again, the expression, especially in if blocks, the expression is looking for a Boolean, true or false answer. So if response is okay, but then we add the not. So if response is not okay, we're going to throw an error. So now that we have our response and we've checked that the response was actually okay, I got it. Now we're going to grab that data. And so again, this is stuff that the AI knew, but we necessarily didn't know going into this. So we need to understand this. And if you didn't have me explaining to it, you could, again, I guess, come over here, and in Copilot, you have different options on here. Agent will do coding for you. Ask will answer questions, and plan is something entirely different. But we're going to use the ask mode here. And we're just going to ask it. And I think it's out of date in mine too. Going to use my desktop version because I know that'll work. And I have to tell it in JS because it doesn't have any awareness here. Now I forgot to put it in ask mode. Hopefully it'll get that. So this, again, is how we use the AI not only to write code examples for us and help us write our applications quickly, but we also use it to learn what it's doing. Again, I have to fix, even for my own installation, the Copilot extension here, but you should be able to do this right here. Highlight this, and you could even probably do highlight that and explain this. I just took it over here in something different, but you'd get the same response. So it says, yes, I don't know why it says yes. That's JavaScript, modern, what's called ES async await. And that's what we're seeing there. And it's going to use, it actually gave us an example of fetch since it didn't have the file we were working on. But response is typically a fetch API response object from fetch. Sure enough, that's what we did before. That's what we're seeing here again. Await pauses execution until the promise settles. A promise, you could ask, what's a promise? But simply a promise is just, again, a way of delaying execution or not, dependent on what you want to happen. You could have the promise wait until it finishes, which is called settling. Or you could say, go ahead and run other code while I'm waiting for this to happen. So wait pauses execution so that data becomes the parsed object. And yep. So await pauses execution until it settles so that data becomes the parsed object array. So we said constant data is await response JSON. So, oh, well, I'm learning too. This must be run inside of an asynchronous function or use a top level await. So that's why when I said earlier, that the async didn't matter here. It does, because we couldn't do these await features if it wasn't an asynchronous function. So that's the explanation for the constant data equals await response JSON, is that it's going to assign all of the JSON data, again, this, to the variable data now. And it's going to do it in a stopping format. It's going to wait until we finished up all of this to get it so that we have our nice, neat data variable set up. Then the next thing it does is it says we're going to set a new variable, current temperature, and that's going to be somewhere inside of this data variable, our JSON again. And this is kind of an interesting format. I'll go through again what it does, but remember how in PHP the dot is our concatenation operator? Well, it works a little bit different, especially with array-like data, and that's what this JSON stuff is, this object that comes back from this. It's looking for the current temperature, so it's going to look for it again in data, and then the question or the dot without the question mark. Just going to remove those to explain. So we would be looking for our temperature in the data current section, temperature 2 meters section. So let's look at that. So this is the data that, again, this is the JSON that's being fetched into that data variable. We look if the opening brackets constitute data, then inside it, the next block is current and temperature 2 meters. So that data.current.temperature 2 meters would fetch this. By adding those question marks, which are called a no coalescence operator, it's simply saying if data doesn't exist, then just use false. If current doesn't exist, then it's false. It's actually undefined. It doesn't do that because if we've gotten all the way from data to current, the assumption is that temperature 2 meters will be there. So we do the same process for that unit because remember in our data, the actual values are separate from the units. So it goes unit is in data current units, temperature 2 meters. So you go from data to current units, temperature 2 meters. That's our degree Fahrenheit. So we got our data values all kind of stored into variables here. We're going to do a little error checking, which is to say if either current temperature is undefined or null. In other words, one of these wasn't there, then something happened and we did get a temperature and it's not worth going any further. So we're going to invoke our catch by throwing an error to it. We can see here when an error is thrown, it simply takes our temperature element. Again, we grab that from up here, which is this paragraph, because we use the get element by ID is temperature. And we're going to set the text content, which means inside of the tag to could not load temperature right now. And we're going to write a console error so that it would be in the console if we looked at it. So if that's what happens if the current temperature isn't there, if we didn't get that out of the data. If it is defined and it's not null, then we move on to the final step here, which is to do the same thing as the error catch does, which is to take that temperature element and text content. And here's that variable substitution template operator again. So it's going to say current temperature in Atlanta, Georgia, colon, and it's going to write current temperature, which is the numeric value, and immediately also write the unit, which is that degrees Fahrenheit. Note here also that because we tested here if current temperature was undefined or null, it made a little assumption. So with our unit variable, if data, current units, and temperature 2 meters were all somehow or other not there, again, our no coalescence operator in the question mark, if any of that came back false, it would just assume to use degrees Fahrenheit. That's what this means, and that's what the or means. We might see this pattern more often. It's good one to know, but if you need to, you can always well, you don't have this in your code sets yet, but eventually you will refer back to it. But that's what that's doing. So if unit wasn't found, it doesn't worry about it because it's not as important. We almost always assume it's Fahrenheit in the US. as long as we got our value, it could still display things pretty dependably. So that's what it's writing is our current temperature in Atlanta, Georgia, colon, the value and the unit. Um, oh yeah, Shanika. So, um, again, part of the code's Copilot chat setup is once you authenticate against like you would have to authenticate with your Copilot chat extension, you will see this error message. At that point, you need to just refresh the browser page, and that will reload the extension,
Cool.
assuming the
Let me try
extension
that.
is installed. So, um, so we come back here and we again it created the paragraph ID temperature and included the script. So if I refresh this, we saw the placeholder text for just a brief flash while it went out and fetched the temperature. And then we see the results of that when it comes back, and it's 57.3 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, with the AI installed and working, my bad, in your environment here, you should be able to do all of this analysis. You could even, once it's written this, ask it to explain the code here, and it would do just what I did by walking through each section. Um, I can do an example of that in my things. Doo, doo, doo. So I'll start a new chat. Now, the one thing that because this is my desktop VS Code versus code server, and it doesn't have all of my files, right? So it doesn't have index.html. So it's not going to know where this comes from, but I bet it explains in general terms. So just explain this JavaScript code. Again, I should have done this with the ask version. Oh, that's another. That's why it took so long. Down here, once you have your Copilot set up, down here you can choose which models to use. GPT-5 Mini, in my opinion, is terrible. I prefer to use the auto. Not only do you get a little bit of a usage discount, but it has a way of passing your prompt through kind of a pre-filter that says, what's the best model for this? So you don't have to wait for a weak model like GPT-5 to come up with an answer, but it did get there eventually. So it's looked at it and it says file temp.js, the DOM element, constant temperature element, use that. Yep. Finds the page element with the ID temperature. Okay. The asynchronous function, a function that fetches the current temperature for Atlanta, Georgia, coordinates an endpoint. It sets the latitude, longitude, and our uh, open media URL. uh, Fetch and status check. So that's our status check here. After fetching, it checks the status of it. Parse the JSON. Safe access is what it's calling, where it's double checking that the temperature 2 meter value is there. validate and update. So if it's found and everything's good, we update the temperature element text, and if not, it updates it with the error. One important thing that I didn't cover when I was going through it is invocation. So again, this was written as a function. Without this, which this is actually I gotta switch to the other one, don't I? This last line, if I comment that out, and that's how you add a comment in both PHP and JavaScript, 2 /, and I come back over here and I reload, this isn't going to update because in order for this function to be executed, you have to invoke it. And that's what I didn't catch, and the AI did, invocation. And then it adds a note, if the DOM element, DOM is the HTML document, with temperature ID is missing, this won't work, right? So it's offering some cleanup in case that doesn't exist. But of course, in our real workspaces, it does exist. And so when you invoke the code by calling the function, we see it working again. So again, even though it's not currently working in our code server environments, we still need to have account access to Copilot Education. The information for which is on our website under Program Information and GitHub Education. I will make sure to get the Copilot chat module fixed for our environments. And I will probably go ahead and go through and install it automatically in everybody's environments so that we don't have to mess with that next time. So as a process, what I hope to demonstrate today is how we're going to be using the AI code to first write code for us, then explain the code that it's written so that we can start to have an understanding of what is going on in our application. When we get to the stage of writing our actual competition application, and we'll have a test version, like a sample version before you get into the actual competition application, it'll be based on a PHP, what's called a framework called Laravel. And Laravel is PHP based, and this is not going to make much difference at all, but this is probably a better way. This is the code behind it. And if we jump into just even the app folder, we can see, not a great example. We can see all these folders that are already, this is like, when I say framework, basically you start with all of this code and modify it to make it your application. And so what we'll be doing with the AI is having it tell us, guide us through setting up the Laravel instance. And so there's going to be a whole lot of code that we don't even know what it does at first. We're just going to get things set up and started, and then we'll dig into it by asking the AI to add this feature or help us add that feature. And so two things are going to be really important for that process is one, understanding uh, the basics. Where did the page go? The data types, and then some of these control flow statements, right? You'll need to understand how conditional statements work. So like if age is 18, what does if age greater than or equal to 18 mean? And how does that evaluate to true or false? We'll need to understand our loops. And especially in PHP, loops will be something we do an awful lot when building our app. Understand variable assignments. And because you have these workspaces, again, you can, I need to update. I will make sure to do that. Update this page so that there's information about how to actually run these, because I think these are just examples. I'll update it to include how to, oops, here, run. Hitting wrong keys. right, using our Node and PHP command lines so that you can come back to previous lessons and explore in the code. Um, 11:45. Questions? Anything you need me to cover again? Nobody? Okay. So in addition to fixing Copilot chat in the workspaces and updating this information, I'm going to create, because we're a little off where the schedule to go was. I'm going to update the coding with AI because our simple game in HTML.js isn't quite as relevant now. Um, and we're going to move more directly towards starting with that Laravel app and getting that set up in a workspace so that then we can see how we can modify it to add features, which hopefully, again, attendance is really important here. If you miss a week, it's a lot of information to miss, but hopefully that should put us back on track to be more or less ready for competition in July. Um, if there's nothing else, I think we'll let you go here. Again, make sure that you're signed up on the hsccatlanta.com site because, putting it in chat once more, this is how you can reach out to us. So if you are working in your workspace on any of the exercises, PHP variables, JavaScript, and for instance, I haven't updated the page and you want to know how to run your JavaScript, use this to send a contact and a question out to us so we can get back to you as soon as possible. And again, that's always available. As instructors, we all have jobs, but most of us also are in front of a computer most of the day, so can hit you back real quick. Um, uh, Shanika or William, anything else to add before we go?
Um, I don't have anything. That, like
Yeah.
Jamie said, consistency is key. It's hard for us to put together teams and for the teams to be successful. I mean, you guys ultimately do the learning if you aren't coming on Saturday. So the reminders will be sent every week, but you guys help us out and kind of take the onus to make sure that you are here every Saturday.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have anything else either. Yeah, I was also trying out in the background to see if anything I could do to try to install the Copilot chat, but I was failing. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thanks everyone for your time this weekend. And yeah, again, feel free to reach out to us throughout the week if there's something that comes up and if there's more assistance that we can do. And yeah, also feel free to share feedback if there's something that we can do to kind of help with absorbing the information. So, all right,
All right.
everyone, have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thank you, guys.